Hi, I'm Shoshana Becker of Naale Elite Academy in Israel. Stay tuned. Taped with Rabbi Doug is next.
Gonna watch Rabbi Doug on the TV tonight.
Forget about the network programs. Forget about all the great cable shows. There's only one thing for me on Mondays and Tuesday nights. Rabbi Doug.
We're gonna see Rabbi Doug. We're gonna watch Rabbi Doug. Yeah, we're gonna watch Rabbi Doug on your TV tonight.
Shalom and welcome to Taped with Rabbi Doug. Glad you could be with us today. My guest today is Shoshana Becker. Welcome to the show. She is here from Israel now, working in the United States as the director of the Western World region of Naale, which doesn't just include the United States, but she is here in the United States working right now. She has a bachelor's in archaeology and geography from Hebrew University, a graduate of Rudderman Master's Program, American Jewish at Haifa University. She's a professional with over 27 years experience in informal education and development in various leadership positions and settings. She served in a number of roles under the Jewish Agency and JDC, including Community Youth Movement Shlicha at the Jewish Federation of Metropolitan Detroit, and the leader of Abonim Dror within that, the director of Atzma, OTZMA, an educational program, North American college graduates in Israel on behalf of the Jewish Agency and Jewish Federations of North America. Shoshana was director of the English-speaking countries division at Israel Experience, and before joining Naale Elite Academy, where she's now the Western World Regional Director, as I mentioned. She worked in resource development at the Society for Advancement of Education. She's the daughter of longtime Olim from the UK, and I presume you were born in the UK and you went on Aliyah with your family?
No, I was born in Jerusalem.
You were born in Jerusalem after they went on Aliyah?
A couple of years.
Very nice. She loves now working for Naale, I understand. It's an amazing program, as you've heard about before on the show in past years, which is a transformative experience to Jewish teens from around the world. It enables them to formulate their own Jewish identity and relationships with Israel based on a positive personal experience while obtaining a free Jewish high school education in Israel, which is funded by the Jewish Agency. And that brings them to Israel, freshman year of high school, pays for 4 years of high school in Israel, encouraging them to stay there for college or to go on Aliyah, which is hopefully part of their goal in wanting to spend their high school years in Israel for such a long time. And it even pays for their trip to Israel to begin their studies. It's an amazing thing, room and board completely covered by the Jewish Agency. And sometimes a tough move for children to say, I'm going to leave home and go to Israel, but I can come back during vacations if I want to visit my parents, or my parents can come to Israel to be with me. And a lot of Chicagoland Jewish students have taken advantage of the Naale program, including some of my former elementary school students that I taught. It's an amazing program, and Shoshana, welcome to the show.
Thank
Brucha haba'ah, and welcome to the Chicago area as you have taken over this position. How long have you been with Naale now?
So about almost 2 years now.
So growing up in Israel and being born in Jerusalem, as we just learned about you, how long was it before you actually left Israel after you were a kid?
Well, I've lived in Israel most of my life. I traveled a lot. I've been abroad many times. I've got family abroad, both in England and actually in Canada. But the first time I lived outside of Israel was when I went on Shlichut to Detroit in 2001.
2001,
Yeah,
very nice.
for 3 years.
That was for the Jewish Federation in Detroit at the time. So
and Abonim Dror.
And Habonim at the same time. That's a big position. And now Naale, which is such an amazing program. So for those of our viewers here around the world who are watching us, as well as those in the Chicago area, tell us what is going on with Naale. The last time we spoke about Naale on our show We talked about new schools opening up for Naale, new programs for Orthodox children, for Chiloni, for people who don't have such a religious background, which still include kosher and Shabbat and everything in their programs. Tell me about the schools right now that are available for students from the Chicago area or any other area in the United States, let's start with, going to Israel for the first time and saying, I'm going to go to high school in Israel, learn about my Judaism and learn in Israel.
Right. So I think we have a nice variety of schools today that cater to all different backgrounds. So no matter if you're modern Orthodox, if you're conservative, reform, whatever, wherever you sit, or none of the above, or any other, we will find something for you.
I know there are Lubavitch and Haredi people also in the program, so
Correct.
it's not just in those circles, but it actually goes from the full spectrum.
Right, completely. So I'll go over the schools that we have. So I'll start from the Chabad schools. We have 2 Chabad schools for girls. One in Tzfat and one in the Krayot area outside of Haifa. And then we have, in terms of the modern Orthodox schools, we now have 3 modern schools for modern Orthodox schools. One is Yeshivat Shalabim, which you've heard about before.
We all know Shalavim.
Absolutely, outside of Modi'in. And we have Ulpinat Amana in Kfar Saba. That's been with us
also for a long time. With
exactly, over 10 years. I'm not sure exactly how long. And we're for this coming year, we're opening a new school. It's not a new school, but it's new to Naale, called Ulpinat Haleli, which is near Gedera in the southeast-ish part of Israel. Ulpinat Haleli, I'll say a few words about it so people can understand. Ulpinat Haleli started, it is a young school, it's been around 8 years. They have, it's a school for girls who are very much into arts. So they have all different arts programs, just like the famed school that we used to see in the program when we were kids back in the 80s. But it's modern Orthodox, and within that there will be a track for Naale girls that may not be too artsy, but it just gives a different kind of taste to it. It's an ulpina, just like other ulpinot for modern Orthodox girls, in an atmosphere of more artistic studies.
Now, all the high school programs are certified, so they do get a high school diploma,
Correct.
which will allow them to apply to colleges if they decide
Absolutely.
to, or to yeshivot, whatever they decide to do, or seminaries.
Correct.
The truth of the matter is that these schools have catered to so many different students. How many would you say, in your estimation and knowledge, since Naale, you haven't been there since the very beginning, how many have stayed and gone on Aliyah after high school?
Okay, so there's a whole story behind it. Yes, the name of Naale stands for Noar Ole Lifnei Horim, youth who come on Aliyah before parents, but it's shifted, it's changed. We're well aware that not everybody makes Aliyah, and it's okay. And it's not a per se Aliyah program, but it is very, for people who want to make Aliyah, I think, especially with teens in the family, this is the perfect program. Because if a family wants to make Aliyah and they have a teenager in the house, it can, the success and how that teenager feels in school, it can make or break your Aliyah.
Well, I want you to know, I've done testing in the past for entry students for Naale.
Right.
A number of those students who I only met at the testing made a connection to me and still stay in touch with me and tell me where they are.
Yeah.
It's amazing,
Yeah.
from all over the United States who came to Chicago to be tested.
Yeah.
A number of them stayed in touch with me, as well as, of course, the Chicago students who I knew that went to Naale.
But I will say that to answer your question, I'd say about 80% make Aliyah, choose to make Aliyah, and it's their choice to make Aliyah when they turn 18. And the others choose to do whatever. They either stay in Israel a little longer, they go study elsewhere. Eventually, their connection to Israel is so strong after 3-4 years in Israel, it's bound to be a connection for life to Israel.
Sure, of course it is. Of course it's really, really wonderful.
Yeah.
What do you think for the students that didn't go to Jewish day schools, didn't have a background, what do you think the greatest advantage of Naale and Israel is for them? Because, you know, when you go to Jewish day school and you have this Ahavat Yisrael from growing up, there's a yearning to try it out and wanting to do it, and some people say, you know, I'll do it for high school. Other people wait after high school. Some people wait to go on their free trip to Israel when they get the chance to do that, and then make a decision to study in Israel after that. Whatever the case might be, what do you think is the attraction for the student that went to public school, finishing 8th grade, saying, I want to go and learn in Israel?
So I didn't, the other schools that I did not mention
Right.
before, I'll mention them now, are for people who don't necessarily keep mitzvot. All our schools, I don't call them chiloni,
Right.
they are mamlachti. Okay, so they do, all the food is kosher. If you want to keep Shabbat, you can keep Shabbat.
But there's Shabbat in the school, the atmosphere.
There's an atmosphere. It's not necessarily a religious atmosphere, but it is a cultural Jewish atmosphere on Shabbat.
I want to make sure that that's clear.
Yeah, thanks for asking that. It's very important.
And Yamim Tovim, also the holidays,
Yeah.
the Jewish holidays are very special in these
Yes.
schools.
Yes. It's more from a Jewish cultural side rather than a religious tefillot, specific tefillot
Right.
and other things. So we do have schools. We have 3 schools of the Mamlachti track. I'm not really sure what to call it. One of them is Ayanot, which is next to Nes Ziona, not 10 minutes drive from Rehovot, which is a nice, small, not huge school, lovely people, you feel like you're on a kibbutz when you're there, and it's a great school. And the other one is Mosinzon in Hod HaSharon, which is in the center of Israel. Big school, kids coming from...
Some kids from there still stay in touch with us.
Exactly, and they've been with us for over, I think probably from the beginning of the Western world, kids coming. And the third one is Nahalal up north in the Jezreel Valley, Emek Yisrael. And that is a program for kids who want to excel in STEM studies. Okay, so, and in the past it had a different name, but they do push these kids, it used to be called Anier, where they used to push the kids to go study in the Technion afterwards, engineering, but now they've opened up the opportunity for kids to continue and push them towards excelling in school and moving on to university. In all STEM programs in all universities.
Wow.
So it's a great,
That's wonderful.
there are options for everybody.
I think it's really important to point out that the students that go to Israel who have no Ivrit, no Hebrew background, have not learned Hebrew, the first thing that they do in their studies is ulpan.
Yeah.
They learn to speak Hebrew, and then within the year, all their studies come in Hebrew, and they master their Hebrew, they master their studies, and they can study in Hebrew and English and do their work because their Hebrew is part of that education. So what a great thing that you start out the high school years by mastering Hebrew as part of the beginning of your studies.
Absolutely. So the first year is an intensive ulpan program. A lot of hours. The idea is to get them to a good level of Hebrew, so that the following year they can do bagrut in Hebrew, their finals in Hebrew. And eventually, after 3-4 years of being in Israel, and how could you not know Hebrew? How can you not converse in Hebrew and talk in it?
Or even think in Hebrew.
Eventually, you also dream in Hebrew.
Yeah.
I will say something. I heard a parent say that they sent their kid to Israel to Naale, not knowing more than 5 words of Hebrew, maybe. And then the child came back for Pesach to be with the parents, and I don't remember, and he spoke perfect Hebrew to their ears he was conversing, completely speaking in Hebrew, and they were so proud.
Of course.
What a change in only a few months.
What an amazing thing.
Yeah.
So my good friend Guidon Berman, I want to thank him for bringing you here. He's the regional manager of Naale throughout a lot of the Western world also, and based in the Chicago area. What is your connection with Guidon and bringing people from the U.S. and I think he does the Netherlands too.
Yes,
and Asia, part of Asia, right?
Correct.
And
part of Africa.
Part of Africa too.
Yeah.
I know he does all these things. How do you connect with him in your position as the Western world supervisor and overseer, with him who manages all these different regions that he goes to and recruits students? How does that connection work, and what is your role in doing that?
Okay, so I have 13 Guidons around the world. Guidon, who many people in the area should know, is in charge of the center of the U.S., all different states in the center of the U.S., and like you said, all of Asia, and a big part of Africa, and the Netherlands, because he speaks the language. And so I have 13 people in North America, South America, Europe, South Africa. I've got an Australian representative and a few more in Europe. And I manage all of them. I manage all of them. I'm in touch with them. We talk about how they work with the families who are interested from step one, from day one, from the first phone call of, what do I do? What is Naale? Which school is best for my child? All the way through the screening, getting on the plane and being in Israel, making sure the family feels comfortable, the parents get their answers, and they have somebody to trust throughout the whole process, who would give them all the answers that they need.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So it's a big area to cover.
It's the whole world. It's most of the world, other than the Russian-speaking countries. I have a colleague who works with that part of the world.
So, right now,
Yeah.
how many students are coming from Israel itself into the Naale program? Because you also take Israeli students, right? How does that work, integrating the students from the rest of the world with the Israeli students who come to these same schools?
Okay, so the schools are not fully Naale schools.
That's kind of what I'm asking.
Yeah, they're Israeli schools that have a group of Naale in every age group.
How do you integrate them? That's kind of what I'm asking.
That is the most important part, I think. Eventually, I think from day one, really, you're there on campus, you eat next to Israeli kids, you do your washing, you go to stand in line for the washing machine with Israeli kids, eventually when you start studying in Hebrew, you share classes with Israeli peers.
So one of my questions is, I guess, the Israeli kids who are in the same schools, are they in dormitories and boarding there too, or are they coming from their homes? That's one of the
That's
things
a good question. That's a good question. It depends in which school. Some schools have all the kids in the dorms. Some schools no. Some of the Israeli kids just come in daily. But there's always more dorm kids who are not Naale kids, who are Israeli.
There are.
And I will say also another thing, Naale kids come from all around the world.
Right.
Okay, so if you go to one of the schools I mentioned, you will not be the only one. You won't be only with US kids.
Right.
You'll be with kids speaking English as their second language or even their third language.
Wow.
All across Europe and other places around the world.
So the majority of sign up students for Naale, are they from the United States, the majority? Or is the majority from South Africa, or is the majority from Europe? Where's the majority of the kids that are in the entire program coming to Israel to study from?
So I will say that more than 50% are Russian speakers, actually. And then it's Spanish and Portuguese.
Spanish and Portuguese.
Yeah, South America, there's a big number. And then it's the English speakers, which a big number of them are from the US.
Very nice, very nice. So, I don't know if you know this answer, but it's something that I wonder. Naale has been around now for a long time. Has
30 years.
30 years the Jewish
30.
Agency. So I've been involved for
Yeah.
about 10 years or a little bit more in my knowledge, and my friendship with Gidom has gone on for many, many years. Tell me about people who graduated from Naale. Tell me, are there anybody who people would know their names? Anybody who's famous? Anybody who's become a scientist? Anybody who's a professor in universities? Anybody who's an actor or a singer or anything like that that people would be aware of? Where do the Naale kids end up?
They end up everywhere. They really end up everywhere. We now finally have a member of Knesset.
A member of Knesset is a Naale graduate.
Eventually we will have a prime minister, we'll have a well-known singer, we'll have them everywhere, but they are everywhere. They're in every single possible position that you can think of in all different occupations. Some in university. We have the first professor now.
You do have a professor.
I just met her. She made Aliyah from Russia. I think she's a biology professor, I'm not sure. So it really takes time, I think.
So literally my show is 30 years old. So since I started doing this television show was at the beginning of Naale before I even knew about it.
Yeah.
And look where it's come. It's amazing.
It really is amazing. This year actually we just celebrated 30 years in the Knesset a month ago, which was amazing. We had, I think, we were planned to have about 5 members of Knesset come and say say a few words and greet everybody. We had over 15 of them, and major
so nice.
Ministers, and it was just so touching to see everybody there.
So, being that the Jewish Agency, which is an Israeli-funded agency, which is funding Naale, does this come down from the Prime Minister? Does it come down from the Knesset itself? Or does it come from social services in the country that make these decisions and consult with Knesset and the Prime Minister? How does the funding come about with the Jewish Agency? The Jewish Agency does a lot of things, and there's a lot of money that's allotted to the Jewish Agency to allow them to do these wonderful things that they do. How does that all work? Because it's a big project to say, if you stay in Chicago, you're going to pay $24,000, just taking a round number, tuition to go to day school, to go to a Jewish high school or Jewish day school, somewhere in that vicinity. Certainly between $20,000 and $30,000 a year. You're going to come to Israel, and it's all going to be covered by the Jewish Agency for every student. And we're talking about hundreds of students. So tell me how that comes about, and where does the funding come from? Because I'm sure that's a question that those who haven't known about Naale before have.
Okay, so I will say it's not just the Jewish Agency.
Okay.
It's
how I've always known it to be Jewish Agency.
It's Jewish. It's a partnership between the Ministry of Education of Israel, the Jewish Agency, and the Naale administration. So the Jewish and each take a different part of it. Tuition is all covered by the Ministry of Education.
Ministry of Education, very good. So
the flights by the Jewish Agency.
The flights are by the Jewish Agency.
But it really is much more than that. It's the partnership of finding the people, making sure to spread the word. As my boss likes to say, our main thing, Yeshayahu, I think you may have interviewed him a few years ago.
Yes.
As he likes to say, our job is to let my people know.
Let my people know. Beautiful.
I like that. So we all take part in that.
What is your goal as the world director of the Western world? What is your goal for Naale in the future? What do you think that you can make a difference that somebody else in your position might not?
Ooh, that's a tough one.
I know. That's why I asked you.
That's tough questions.
First time I met you, and I want to know.
What is my goal? I think my goal is to reach more people that would otherwise not hear about Naale. I don't think we reach everybody. I really don't. I think we have the tip of the iceberg.
I want you to know I'm a believer in Naale and a supporter of Naale, and that's why I'm having you on my show right now, because I'm helping you spread the word.
And thank you.
And I think it's very important. I think that a program like this, we say what will save Judaism for the future? The answer is Jewish education. The answer is having a love for Israel and a love in your heart for your Judaism. That's what's going to save Judaism for the future. So parents who are out here, if you're not giving your kids a good Jewish education, your insurance policy is down the drain. But your insurance policy for your children, their Jewish future and future generations is Jewish education. And Naale is one of the top sources of that education and building that love for Israel for the future of our Jewish students, who will be the future of the parents of Jewish students in the future, and carry this on. I think it's so important.
I would add two things. Strengthening your own Jewish identity through your connection to Israel. If you don't come to Israel, you won't have a strong enough basis to strengthen your Jewish identity. My feeling is, even if it's just for a few weeks, for a few years, but definitely if you want your child to continue having a strong Jewish life, whatever they choose to be, I think bringing them on Naale will strengthen their Jewish identity without you even trying.
And you know, Naale 30 years ago is different than Naale today, because today we have cell phones. We can talk to our parents every day from Israel, where 30 years ago that wasn't the case. I know when I was in yeshiva in Israel, I talked to my parents 2 times in the whole year, because you had to make, you couldn't use asimonim in the telephone. You had to make person-to-person collect calls to get a hold of them from a payphone, and then you had to make sure that they could connect. And it cost you $35 for 5 minutes or whatever it was. So today, free calls up and back, and WhatsApp and all those other apps that you can call for free on. So you're only a telephone call away from a video call with your parents every single day, except for Shabbat. And it's really a wonderful thing, which makes Naale even more attractive for students today than it might have been 30 years ago.
Right. And travel is also much easier than it was when you were at that age.
Much easier. Yeah. So we only have a minute left. Has COVID been a deterrent for Naale, or has it been handled well?
Not only has it been handled well, I think it was a good time for Naale, because at the beginning our numbers went up. Our numbers went up through COVID because kids would rather be with their peers, out there doing things, than being stuck at home, especially in the first year was really difficult. And families saw that we can take care of your kids while being in an educational environment.
Wonderful.
So it was really good.
Continued hatzlacha, continued success to you, to Naale, to Gidon in our area, and to the entire program, and to all the students who are learning to love Israel and study in Israel. And I want to thank all of you for being with us. Remember, you can check out our website, www.tvrabbi.com, where you can also see former shows on the web and some former shows about Naale from the past. I want to thank Shoshana Becker for joining us. She is the director of Western World of Naale Elite Academy. And I want to thank all of you. Remember, we're on every week at this time, so I hope to see you next time right here on Taped with Rabbi Doug. Shalom, everyone.
And I'm talking about Rabbi Doug. Talking about Rabbi Doug. Talking about Rabbi Doug on your TV show. Well, he's the rabbi for me. Anytime you need. You're gonna get married or you're gonna die. Gonna see Rabbi Doug. And I'm talking about Rabbi Doug. Talking about Rabbi Doug. Talking about Rabbi Doug on your TV show. Well, he's the rabbi for me. Anytime you need. You're gonna get married or you're gonna die. Gonna see Rabbi Doug. And I'm talking about Rabbi Doug. Talking about Rabbi Doug. Talking about Rabbi Doug on your TV show. Gonna see Rabbi Doug. Gonna see Rabbi Doug. Gonna see Rabbi Doug on the TV tonight.
This has been a Taped with Rabbi Doug production.